everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 of the teacher APPR explanations. Um, Today we're talking about the pre-conference meeting and how you explain your different actions using a generalized rubric. So that's what we'll be looking at today. This one should be pretty quick. So our pre-conference is usually the discussion between you and your observer that explains what is really going to be happening in a lesson. In this case, it links up to your learning standards and working through your basically effectiveness as a teacher based on, in the case of New York, my school district is using the Danielson rubric, which is one of the more common ones out there. There are other variations of it, but my school uses the Danielson. And like I said in the last video, they're all very, very similar. It's the only thing that really changes is the semantics. So when I take a look at this, okay, I had to type some of this stuff in, and there's also comments on my posts from the administrator, so some of these are a little mixed. And you'll also see checkboxes. So in most cases, if you see something that says unable to determine, or if there's boxes that are just left entirely blank in a section, that typically means that there just wasn't an opportunity to see it, not that there is a poor review coming. So I just want to get that out of the way so you know that's clear. So, in this case, my learning objective, okay, the students are going to complete a bill of materials to determine the cost of a project in board feet, right? I posted all of these things on the board in the classroom, and our district uses I can statements. So in my case, my I can statement for this particular section of the project was I can apply knowledge to design and construct a project. Right, it's kind of like your students will be able to, or other variations, right? Our school uses I can statements and expects us to have them posted up on the board. Okay, so here's what happens. I have that posted up on the board. In this case, it looks like my administrator either didn't see it or didn't know where to look for it, and that is on me because I did not mention where it would be posted. So in this case, it was not a positive or a negative. It was just unable to determine, right? So then the learning objectives, right, were they on target for grade level standards? Boom. Yes, they were. Right? I would argue they might even be a little bit above grade level standard. Okay. Then I could look at planning and preparation. This all comes out based on my conversation with the administrator. So if their questions to me make it evident that I know about these things and that I'm doing them effectively, that's when they get checked off. So I know my content and the structure of the discipline. Okay, I have knowledge of the prerequisite relationships, so that's where this fits into what was done before it. Okay, and I have knowledge of pedagogy related to the actual content. How to teach this specific type of knowledge. So that's where that comes into play. Okay, and here's the comments that I got. Okay, so the students are designing and building a capstone project, requiring them to apply the knowledge learned to create the project. Right, so that's showing the larger scale application. Right, the project is built specifically in steps so that the kids can utilize their knowledge between the drawing and construction of their project. Right, so it's relating the skills together. Okay. The step that's being learned in this lesson is the bill of materials, calculating the cost of the project in board feet. Right? It takes outside knowledge of math in order to complete the task. Boom. That's all set. Okay. Demonstrating knowledge of students. So this is where a lot of people can struggle if you're someone who, especially if you're new and you haven't really quite figured out a way to get that rapport with your students yet. Demonstrating your knowledge of them is a big deal, It's like I said in the first video, um, forming a good relationship with your students is the basis of everything. If you can't do that, then you will always struggle. Um, so in this case, right, it's evident based on the conversation that I have knowledge of adolescent development and psychology. Okay, um, that's pretty much a given. I talk a lot about that even on this channel. Okay, I know what my students are capable of and where they're currently at, so I know where I can take them from. Um, I have knowledge of the student's special needs, so this means I'm up to date on IEPs, 504 plans, basically special needs items or assistance and that sort of thing for my students. This one here, knowledge of the learning process. In this case, it probably just didn't come up in the conversation, so it couldn't be checked off. Okay, and cultural heritage doesn't have a whole lot to do with this lesson, and interest, that could go either way. This one's a little vague, and it didn't come up in the conversation, so that one doesn't get a check mark either. Okay, what really comes down to what's more valuable is the comments that you get and being able to decipher what they actually mean. So in this case, I've crossed out where names are, but these are referring to me, essentially. So I demonstrated knowledge of student development when I stated that the group I was teaching is inconsistent. And then she quoted me as I told her, this particular group, I never know what I'm going to get from day to day. Some days are great, some days are an absolute struggle. And I made sure that my administrator knew that. And my administrator reinforced that, saying that typically early teens are inconsistent and behaviors are dependent on the day. That is right on the noggin, right? With 12, 13, 14-year-olds, you never know what you're going to get. It's the most tumultuous time in someone's life. So that was recognized, and that's fantastic. So when I talk about things like that, we also have to talk about the scaffolding. So in this case, my scaffolding is that the project is based on prior student knowledge. So the bill of materials is that next step in the process, okay, sort of reiterating what we had earlier. Okay, it's intentional about planning for skills and application. I don't have a copy of the lesson plan for this because I actually didn't submit one. The one that I used in the video for part 1 of this series was the closest thing to a lesson plan that I actually submitted on this one, which is not something I normally do, but I basically didn't know the computer program that we started this year, and our requirements changed, so I didn't really submit it, and I was kind of supposed to, but I got some leeway there. Things changed. I don't think it affected anything because, to be quite honest, the evaluation, I got a glowing review. So building on prior knowledge, okay, I was intentional about planning and applying the skills in the classroom, so what I was doing was really relevant. The plan is built, right, talks about the structure of it, okay, it includes repetition, that way I can ensure that all the students understand it, and I give the opportunity for those that need additional help to either get that time in the room or during learning block. Learning block is a newer concept, and when I first started in this school district, I really liked it. It's basically, instead of doing after school for extra help, we have like a partial period halfway through the day where you can request students to come to your room. It makes things a logistical nightmare, but it was being done right when I first started here. And then once COVID came around and we had to start splitting up groups to reduce numbers, it has changed quite a bit, and it's not so useful now. Especially at the middle school level, it was much more practical for the high school. So I give opportunities for that, and that was recognized. Okay. Setting outcomes. Okay, so setting the value, the sequence, and alignment, that's all based on what we read earlier. Basically setting a good context and making sure that everything is aligned with your state standards and disciplinary standards, right? As far as what fits within your educational discipline, right? And whether or not the lesson was suitable for diverse students, right? We talked about that because I talked about the 504s, IEPs, extra needs that people had. Clarity and balance weren't really discussed, so those did not get checked off. Alright, moving on. So this sort of restates what we saw before. This is all from the administrator. It says students are building a project in which the outcomes are rigorous and important learning and technology. Right? That right there shows that she sees the value. Okay? That's a fantastic thing to see. Right? Each student is in a different place in the project, indicating that diverse student needs are being met. Right? That's your differentiation right there. So she saw that the lesson is differentiated and differentiated well. Right? It suits each student's diverse needs. Okay, that's really a great focus. Okay, demonstrating my knowledge of resources. So this is looking at what's in my classroom, right? Do I have resources that I can use in the classroom to do this? Do the students have resources? Do they have access to them? Do I have access to them? So if I look down here, here's how it was proven. Okay, the resources are available in the classroom and align with the standards. Okay, so they have, calculators, physical worksheets, something to write with, all those things. Right. The bill of materials, it's appropriately challenging, and the students are allowed to use calculators to complete the math. Okay, I always allow calculators. I don't think we should do mental math if we don't have to. I've never been a big fan of math, so I'd rather have them be able to get it accurate than to be able to do it in their heads. Okay. Right. Coherent instructions. Okay. Essentially, my learning activities, my lesson and unit structure, okay, those were very coherent. She saw the process. We didn't talk about instructional groups or materials and resources that much until the post-conference. So those were not checked here for that reason. So activities in the plan, they're designed to move the student through the project and process, okay, to incorporate the previous learning. Right? That's the whole basis of a capstone, self-explanatory. Right? The structure of the project and the outcome are clear and sequenced. Okay? It means things go in an order and it's a clear order, right, to create that final product. Okay? As far as student assessments, okay, congruence with the instructional outcomes basically means that my formative and summative assessments made up correctly with what I wanted the kids to learn. Okay, we didn't talk necessarily about detailed criteria and standards for the assignment, so once again, nothing checked there. Right, but once again, where it matters is on the comments. So let me flip to the next page. Okay, the design of formative assessments. Right, design of formative assessments, that was a big one. Okay, from what I understand, she quite liked the worksheet that I used, that bill of materials worksheet. So that was checked off. Okay, we didn't discuss how I use it for planning for the rest of the project, so that wasn't really done. Right? So a lot of these things just don't pop up because you don't have the time or the opportunity to really talk about them in depth, because especially for people who've been doing this for a while, a lot of this stuff is just self-explanatory. You don't even think about it. It's not really even a conscious thought after a while. Okay, so the evidence for that, okay, the final draft is their own, based on their own project drawing that they made. So they're using their own measurements that are from their own designs. So no two are alike, right? I mentioned throughout the lesson that I will check for understanding using thumbs up processes. Okay, so it's setting expectations, so that was there as well. And that's all it really runs down to. Nothing too crazy here. Okay, so this was all from the pre-conference. These are the things that were talked about with my administrator. So there's a good amount of discussion that's done on these sorts of things. And it's just a cool way of doing everything. So that's where we're at. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.